Be me, 29-year-old feminist activist, master's degree in gender studies, work as diversity consultant for tech companies. Always been passionate about calling out sexism and educating men, built entire career around challenging male perspectives. Recently noticed something deeply unsettling happening. Men just don't engage with my arguments anymore. Not angry pushback, complete indifference to everything I say. Starts with my relationship with longtime boyfriend Jake. Been together 3 years. Used to have passionate debates about feminism. I'd point out problematic behavior. He'd defend himself. We'd discuss for hours. Recently told him his mansplaining was interrupting my career advancement. Expected usual defensive response and educational opportunity. Instead, he just said, "Okay," and went back to watching Netflix. No argument, no justification, no engagement whatsoever. Felt like talking to a brick wall instead of partner. Try bringing up topic again next week during dinner. We need to discuss how your male privilege affects our relationship dynamics. Jake looks up from his phone. Sure. What would you like me to do differently? Ready to launch into detailed explanation of patriarchal power structures. He's already agreeing without hearing my analysis. Whatever you think is best, while clearly not listening. Realize he's treating me like background noise, giving surface compliance while mentally checked out completely. Visit my brother Tom for Sunday family dinner. Always enjoyed our political debates about gender issues. Catch him making sexist comment about female coworkers' promotion. She probably slept her way to the top. Perfect opportunity to educate him about workplace misogyny. That's exactly the kind of thinking that perpetuates rape culture, expecting his usual defensive arguments about merit and fairness. Tom just shrugs, "You're probably right," and asks Mom to pass potatoes. Conversation ends before it begins. No heated discussion, no learning opportunity, just dismissal. Attend his birthday party later that month. His male friends making jokes that reinforce toxic masculinity. Interrupt conversation to explain harmful gender stereotypes. Comments like that contribute to male suicide rates and emotional suppression. Expecting pushback or at least curiosity about my perspective, guys just nod politely and immediately change subject to football. Feel completely invisible despite being physically present. They're not hostile. They're treating me like I don't exist. Work situation becomes even more confusing. Consulting with startup about inclusive hiring practices. Present detailed analysis of unconscious bias in tech recruitment. Algorithms perpetuate systemic discrimination against women and minorities. Male CEO listening attentively, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. Feel encouraged by apparent engagement with feminist framework. Implementation meeting reveals they hired different consulting firm, decided to focus on skills-based hiring instead. My recommendations completely ignored despite polite reception. Professional expertise dismissed without direct confrontation. Dating Jake becomes increasingly frustrating. Point out microaggressions in his daily language. Saying guys to address mixed groups erases female presence. He immediately starts saying everyone instead. Asking if I need help with heavy boxes assumes female weakness, stops offering assistance with anything physical. Giving me exactly what I asked for, while somehow missing the point entirely. Compliance without comprehension or genuine belief change. Feels like training dog rather than educating partner. Friend Sarah mentioned similar experience with her husband. Used to fight about household labor division. Now, he just hires cleaning service. Asked him to share emotional labor. He started paying for my therapy. Wanted him to understand privilege. He donated to women's organizations. Pattern of men solving feminist complaints through resources rather than engagement. Throwing money at problems instead of examining underlying issues. Purchasing their way out of ideological conversations. Attend feminist book club where discussion reveals broader pattern. Men at work just agree with everything I say. Now my dad stopped defending traditional gender roles. Even conservative uncle nods when I talk about patriarchy. initially excited about apparent progress and male consciousness. Realize none of these men actually changed their fundamental beliefs. They learned that agreement ends conversations faster than argument. Discovered masculine strategy of superficial compliance. Visit Tom's house for nephew's birthday party. His friends discussing women in ways that trigger my feminist analysis. Interrupt to explain objectification and male gaze theory, expecting resistance, or at least engagement with my perspective. Conversation simply pauses until I finish talking, then resumes exactly where it left off, as if I never spoke. Not angry dismissal, complete irrelevance of my input. Feel like ghost trying to impact physical world. Workplace interactions become increasingly hollow. Male colleagues ask for diversity recommendations, provide detailed analysis of inclusive leadership practices. They implement surface-level changes while ignoring systemic issues. Gender-neutral bathroom signs without addressing pay equity. Women's networking events without examining promotion bias. Checking diversity boxes without examining underlying power structures. My expertise reduced to cosmetic organizational improvements. Relationship with Jake reaches breaking point. Confront him about his emotional unavailability during feminist discussions. You say the right words, but you're not actually listening. I need you to engage with these ideas, not just comply. Jake finally responds with honesty that shocks me. There's literally no right answer when you start these conversations. If I disagree, I'm sexist. If I agree, I'm not understanding correctly. If I ask questions, I'm making you do emotional labor. Easier to just wait until you're done talking. Realize he's been managing me rather than engaging with me, treating my feminism like weather, something to endure rather than influence. His strategy? Minimal resistance, maximum survival. Learned that participation in feminist discourse is no-win situation. Any response becomes evidence of problematic male behavior. Silence and compliance, only viable options for relationship preservation. Tom finally explains his perspective during private conversation. You've made it clear that everything I think is wrong. Why would I share opinions you've already decided are invalid? Easier to let you win every argument than to fight battles I can't win. Describes feeling like defendant in court where verdict predetermined. My feminist education became ideological prosecution. Masculine perspectives criminalized rather than corrected. Visit university campus for guest lecture on workplace equality. Notice male students silent during Q&A session when professor directly calls on men for their thoughts. No questions, despite clearly having opinions based on body language. After lecture, overhear male students discussing presentation, detailed analysis and critique shared only among themselves. Learn to self-censor in mixed-gender academic settings. Feminist classroom becoming intellectual safe space, excluding masculine viewpoints. Dating becomes exercise in masculine performance management. Jake anticipating feminist objections before expressing any opinion. I know this might sound sexist, but preceding normal observations, self-censoring thoughts to avoid triggering gender analysis. Our relationship becoming his careful navigation of ideological minefield. Romance dying under weight of constant political evaluation. Intimacy impossible when every interaction subject of feminist critique. Attend friend's wedding where troubling pattern continues. Male wedding guests carefully monitoring language around female guests. Conversations become stilted and formal when women join groups. Bachelor party stories heavily edited for mixed company, not because content inappropriate, but because feminist interpretation unpredictable. Social interactions governed by fear of saying something analyzable. Masculine authenticity suppressed to avoid feminist education. Work performance review reveals unexpected feedback. Clients appreciate your expertise, but find implementation challenging. Recommendations theoretically sound, but practically difficult to execute. Perhaps focus on achievable changes rather than systemic transformation. Realize my feminist consulting creating compliance fatigue. Organizations going through motions without believing in underlying ideology. Professional success measured in policy changes rather than belief conversion. Jake finally admits he's been researching men's rights perspectives, wanted to understand why feminist conversations feel so hostile, found communities of men discussing exactly what I've been experiencing. Apparently, this pattern happening everywhere. Discovers masculine counter-narrative about feminist discourse tactics, men sharing strategies for surviving ideological relationships. Underground masculine culture developing independently of feminist input. Relationship ends when Jake moves out without major confrontation. I love you, but I can't be your student anymore. Every conversation becomes lesson about my problematic thinking. Feel like I'm failing test I never signed up to take. Describes relationship as emotionally exhausting performance. Constant evaluation of thoughts and words for feminist compliance. Romantic partnership became educational project rather than equal connection. 6 months later, working as diversity consultant becomes increasingly difficult. Companies hiring feminist consultants to demonstrate progressive values, implementing surface recommendations while maintaining existing power structures. Male executives learn to speak feminist language without changing behavior, absolutely committed to gender equality while promoting identical patterns. Discovered that feminist influence peaked and now faces organized indifference. Attend family gathering where transformation becomes obvious. Tom and Jake both present. Interacting normally with other men. When I approach conversations, energy immediately shifts. Polite acknowledgement followed by topic changes or group dispersal. Not hostile rejection. Strategic avoidance of feminist engagement. Learned I've become ideological hazard rather than welcome family member. Realize that complete indifference worse than angry opposition. Hostility validated importance of feminist perspective. Indifference suggests total irrelevance to masculine consciousness. Men developed immunity to gender criticism through emotional detachment. My passionate activism reduced to background noise in their lives. Uncle pulls me aside during family barbecue. You're smart, girl, but you've made yourself impossible to talk to. Every conversation becomes argument about what's wrong with men. We learned easier to avoid you than deal with constant criticism. Family relationships damaged by ideological evangelism. Feminist identity prioritized over personal connections. Start questioning effectiveness of confrontational educational approach. Men tuned out rather than tuning in to feminist messaging. Constant criticism created defensive disengagement rather than enlightenment. Activist strategy backfired by alienating intended audience. Educational mission failed through audience withdrawal. Learned uncomfortable truth about ideological influence requires willing participation from people being educated. Men chose silence over engagement when discourse became hostile. Feminist criticism became powerless when masculine audience opted out. Intellectual authority meaningless without receptive listeners. 6 months of reflection reveals systematic masculine withdrawal, not from women, but from feminist discourse. Specifically, men maintaining relationships while avoiding ideological discussions. Separating personal connections from political education. Romantic and familial bonds surviving despite feminist identity rejection. Discovered that feminist destruction came through irrelevance rather than reputation. Men choosing apathy over anger when facing constant gender criticism. Silence more devastating than argument to activist identity. Intellectual influence dying through audience disengagement. Passionate expertise reduced to unwelcome background commentary. Learned that being ignored worse than being opposed. Opposition acknowledges importance of feminist perspective. Indifference suggests complete irrelevance to masculine decision-making. Men developed sophisticated avoidance strategies for feminist education, my opinions holding no weight in their actual life choices. Understand now that men don't care because caring became too expensive. Feminist discourse designed to create guilt and behavioral change. Men learn to reject both guilt and obligation through strategic apathy. Psychological self-protection through ideological disconnection. Masculine identity evolution beyond feminist approval. Seeking feminist influence neutralized through complete masculine indifference. Not argumentative defeat, but conversational irrelevance. Men stopped fighting because they stopped caring about winning approval. Ideological power requires mutual engagement that no longer exists. My passionate activism speaking to the empty room of polite masculine silence.